Hello and welcome to Viewpoints. I'm Andrew Phelps. With us today is Chad Gorman of the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Today Chad will be talking to us about getting serious about video games, the title of his thesis, using video game-based learning to enhance nuclear terrorism preparedness. Welcome, Chad.
Thank you, Andrew.
So where did you get the idea, the initial concept for integrating video gaming into nuclear preparedness?
I actually borrowed the initial idea from the leadership of science and technology at DHS. I was with Undersecretary O'Toole about a year and a half ago, briefing her on some of our programs at FEMA and how we're trying to make headway to better prepare the nation for an incident such as a nuclear terrorism strike. Throughout that conversation, one of the comments by Undersecretary O'Toole was, I'd like to see if we can explore using video games to solve some of these problems, knowing how interactive those interfaces are and how much time the public and particularly the gaming community spends and invests in playing those games. It seemed like a ripe opportunity to explore leveraging that tool to fill some of our capability gap areas.
Were you exploring in your research primarily integrating some of these ideas and concepts into existing video games or doing specific nuclear preparedness video games standalone?
My initial going in standpoint was to possibly develop a partnership with video game developers, Sony, some of the other Dreamcast, some of the other gaming systems that are out there. What I actually found, and was a surprise, is that there's an entire gaming community out there of video game developers who are trying to leverage video games to deliver socially conscious messages. It's actually known as serious gaming, and they've become a lot more community-based here as of late in the last couple of years. There's already actually are non-governmental institutions that exist. Games for Change out of New York City is one of the examples that exists solely to develop, mature, and carry out the serious gaming mission. And so what I actually ended up in my research and what I recommended was to partner with these communities, these serious gamers, to develop specific games that could be used to enhance preparedness. Obviously, the recommendations or these ideas shouldn't be limited just to that concept, and I could see in the future, if we had the right collaboration, actually instituting some of these concepts into existing video games that are out there on the shelves every day.
Did you have any pushback from the folks that you spoke to about integrating a U.S. government message into video gaming in terms of indoctrination or how that might be perceived by the public?
I think the biggest feedback I got, and I did talk to several people in the community, they are actually referenced and thanked in my thesis, but the concern was not particularly what the message said. It's the delivery vehicle and the delivery mechanism. And so when we're looking at putting these concepts into games, making sure that it's a game that remains a game. And what I mean by that is we're not creating a software package to teach people just to get inside after an incident. It is built into the larger context of a game, and it remains a game by still being fun, engaging, and drawing people in, which is how I defined a game in my thesis. And so that was the key point and the key feedback I kept getting from the community is they saw the value of adding these messages to the scripts and scenarios of games, but they were concerned that the game could take almost the edutainment type of flavor where you have math blasters and you go in there and you're just learning math and it's not really a dynamic interface, but layering this into a complex game scenario that would challenge players and really draw them in and want to play it.
You mentioned that there's already some games on the market that incorporate some sort of message, a learning message. Were you able to do any research or look at any numbers or statistics that showed the efficacy of some of these other attempts at integrating a particular message or learning objective into a enjoyable, fun video game?
I did actually, and one of the games, and I found this in some of the literature I reviewed, was Darfur is Dying. And so what happened was MTV actually led a contest and said, develop a game that could be used to teach people a variety of social contexts or social problems. And one of the submissions, and ultimately the winner of the contest, was a game called Darfur is Dying, and where you actually play a citizen of Darfur and you live out a day in their life. You're trying to gather food, gather resources, water, but also try to avoid some of the dangerous militias or other threats that exist in that environment. And really what it drove home, and it's a very complex game, you tend to be very challenged in it, but it drives home the reality of the situation in Darfur for the player. And actually, they've done a lot of studies after in the last couple of years, and they've seen a lot of drive to action based on playing this game, whether that is submissions of letter to Congress, asking for action, further research on the topic of what's going on in Darfur, and other type of actions. But there was a direct link into players that had played that game and certain types of actions that fell out of the back.
I don't think Donkey Kong taught us any of those types of lessons. That's fantastic that you're pursuing this research. Was there anything that surprised you as you were researching this topic?
What really surprised me, I think, is that really the time is now for this idea. What I found in my research, and really was driven home when I discovered this entire serious gaming community out there, is that we have all the pieces to do this. We have, in particular to nuclear terrorism, science is telling us what actions to take to save lives on an extremely large magnitude scale, hundreds of thousands of lives. If we can teach them simple things to do to take action after an incident, simply go inside, stay inside, and then wait for more information, but to protect them from that dangerous fallout. The instinctual instincts of people would possibly be to flee or evacuate, but if we can get that information into them in a preparedness mindset, we could save a large amount of lives. So we have the information. The vehicles are out there. The video game software, we are developing very complex games for just basically for fun and for leisure purposes right now. So the tool is out there. And then we have this serious gaming community which is trying to leverage this very powerful communications tool for socially conscious ends. And so we have all three of those pieces. I think what we need now is a construct that can bring all of that together, and so that we can bring in the game developers, the keeper of this communications tool. This is not a government core competency. We can bring the science, we can bring the desire to teach the public these messages or these concepts, but we would need the help of the gaming community in a true collaborative environment to help develop games that could be used for these purposes. And so that was really what the surprise was, is that all the tools and the pieces are out there, and I think right now the time is now to take advantage of that and implement this concept so that we can try to push the preparedness levels forward. And we shouldn't look at this just in the guise of nuclear terrorism. That was another thing that I learned along the way, is that for the purposes of my thesis, I kept this narrowly scoped into nuclear terrorism preparedness, but there was no reason we couldn't do similar things for earthquake preparedness, tornado preparedness, hurricane preparedness. You could be using this in an all hazards type of an approach, and I think it could be a dynamic tool to get access to communities that currently are not served by our current messaging strategies.
Favorite video game when you were a kid?
Contra.
Contra, there we go. Well, thank you, Chad, for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew.